Access District meeting. Ask the city clerk if public notice was sent for this meeting.
Yes.
Thank you. Can we have roll call, please?
Mayor Hodges, Commissioner Davis,
Here.
Commissioner Hoppick,
Here.
Commissioner Peck,
Here.
Commissioner Ryan,
Here.
Tom Toll,
Here.
Carl Esping.
Here.
That's it. I love meetings with short agendas. First on the order of business is approval of minutes of the June 14th meeting. Anyone have any corrections, additions?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from June 14th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 7-0. Thank you. New business. Discussion on the next meeting date. That far ahead, my schedule's flexible, so I guess, are there folks whose schedules would be more restricted than ours?
What part of the year are you looking at? November?
Oh, I'm sorry, November, right, so suggested dates were November 8th and 15th.
I guess my preference would be the 8th. I may be absent on the 15th.
I'd rather keep
8th
it
is
early in
fine.
the month.
I move we have the next meeting on November 8th of 2021.
Is there a second? It moved and seconded to have our next meeting on November 8th. Our agenda would be a little long. I imagine we have to set the time right now, do we? No, all right. So we'll just set the date now. All in favor of November 8th, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Any unfinished or other business? We got water in the lake, water in the river. All right.
For the time being.
For the time being. All right, entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All right, moving the second to adjourn, and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
My wife-
Wow, you run a quick meeting.
That's the way to run a meeting.
Yeah, you give me an agenda like this and I will. I promise you I will. Mhm.
Hey,
Well,
I have been pretty proud.
yeah,
Is there a record? We've done pretty well all this year.
Before we get started, I'd like to confirm that the Kansas Open Meeting Act required notice has been properly provided.
Yes.
Thank you very much. With that, we will proceed with roll call.
Mayor Hodges,
Here.
Commissioner Davis,
Here.
Commissioner Hoppick,
Here.
Commissioner Peck,
Here.
Commissioner Ryan.
Here.
Would all who are able please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, awards and proclamations.
Recognition of the month of August 2021 as Breastfeeding Month in the city of Salina. Mona Hargrave will read the proclamation.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mona Hargrave. I am a resident of Salina, Kansas, and I work at the Saline County Health Department for the WIC division as the WIC breastfeeding peer counselor. I have some of my friends with me here today from the Saline County Breastfeeding Coalition, and we are all involved in doing work in the community to advocate and support breastfeeding families. Whereas human milk feeding is the biological norm for infant feeding and a proven primary prevention strategy that builds a foundation for lifelong health and wellness. And whereas all major medical authorities recommend exclusive human milk feeding for the first 6 months of life, with continued human milk feeding for at least 1 year. And whereas the consistent and well-documented health, economic, and environmental benefits of human milk feeding show that this is an investment that will continue to produce measurable dividends across the country and many times over for families, employers, and the government. And whereas there are substantial racial and ethnic disparities in access to lactation support, resulting in reduced breastfeeding rates and an associated increase in risk for a variety of negative health outcomes. And whereas at the time of this proclamation, a recent Centers for Disease Control and Prevention analysis of birth certificate data reports that among infants born in 2019, 89.6% of infants in Kansas were ever breastfed, with a 16.1 percentage point difference in breastfeeding rates between racial groups. And whereas National Breastfeeding Month and World Breastfeeding Week provide important opportunities to address barriers to human milk feeding and breastfeeding faced by families across the United States and around the world. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the mayor and city commissioners of the city of Salina do hereby recognize the month of August as National Breastfeeding Month in the city of Salina, and urge all Salina citizens to support the goals of National Breastfeeding Month, World Breastfeeding Week, Native Breastfeeding Week, Asian American, Native, Hawaiian Pacific Islander Breastfeeding Week, and Black Breastfeeding Week. In addition, the mayor and city commissioners are urging citizens to support policies and funding to ensure that all lactating parents can access a full range of appropriate support from childcare and healthcare institutions, healthcare insurers, employers, researchers, and government entities. Proclaimed this second day of August 2021.
Thank you. Do you have any activities or things that you'd like to promote during Breastfeeding Month?
Yeah, we've done one of our activities already. This has been our 6th year as part of my job over at the health department, I do have a social media page for breastfeeding support and education. And this was the 6th year that we did a group photo shoot, which our mommies really love being part of. They get very excited about it every year. They bring their babies, we get together and we do a group photo shoot. That is then posted on our Facebook page as our cover photo for the coming year. Unfortunately, with COVID, we've had to kind of revise the way we do that. But I have a wonderful mommy who is also a photographer who last year and this year, she took individual photos of the mommies and babies and then put them all together in a collage. And it's came out just really beautifully. And the mommies just love it. And so that's one thing we do for them. Part of what the coalition's work has been, we did this a few years back, but we're getting ready to kind of do a renewal of it, is something called Breastfeeding Welcome Here. It's part of the Community Supporting Breastfeeding campaign. So several years ago, we went around to different businesses and asked them if they would mind supporting breastfeeding in a public kind of way. So what that involves for a business is, if they agree to it, there's a very short little form to be filled out. We oftentimes do that for them. And then we send that in and they receive in the mail a cling for the front of their window to their business that just says, we support breastfeeding. And they also, most importantly, get a packet of information to share with their employees. It's a little bit of training information that they can use with their employees, because one of the hardest things for a breastfeeding mom is to go into a public place, because really, should moms have to stay at home all the time just because they're breastfeeding? I think not. And so oftentimes they'll go out into the community, maybe to have dinner with their family or something of that nature, to go shopping. And guess what? Babies get hungry when babies get hungry, and they need to be fed when they need to be fed. And oftentimes moms, when they breastfeed in public, are faced with either just yucky looks or even worse, terrible comments that are made to them. They are oftentimes asked to please leave and go somewhere else to do that. Even some people go so far as to tell them to go in the bathroom to feed their baby. I personally wouldn't want to eat my dinner in a bathroom. So this effort is to help these business owners to teach their staff how to handle situations where somebody complains about a breastfeeding mom, so that both parties can walk away happy. So for instance, in a restaurant, if someone is complaining because they can see a breastfeeding mom, staff can approach them and say, what can we do to make you feel more comfortable? Could we perhaps seat you at a different table? And so just things like that, to where it ends up being a win-win situation where the business doesn't lose patrons, but that mom gets to feed her baby as she should. There's actually a law about that. And if it's okay with you guys, I would like to pass these out. I prepared a packet of information for all of you to look over later. On the very top of it is a card that talks about that law, that basically just says, any place a mom has a right to be, she has a right to breastfeed. And so we really don't have the right to ask moms to leave. And unfortunately, that is still happening. I had a mom come to me very recently after being asked to go somewhere else to feed her baby at a local fitness center. So it still happens. And we're just doing our best to educate people as to the benefits of breastfeeding and why it's important that we support families that choose to breastfeed.
Well, thank you very much. If you'd like to come forward, I can give you the signed proclamation. And if you wouldn't mind leaving the materials with the city clerk, she can distribute those to us. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, that brings us to Citizens Forum. Citizens Forum is an opportunity for anyone here, either physically or virtually, to address the commission on any item that is not on today's agenda. We would just ask that you limit your remarks to 3 minutes. and that you please identify yourself by your first and last name and let us know where you're from. And with that,
Norman Mantle, Salina, Kansas. Recently, I spoke to you on an issue about jurisdictions. I can't read this in 3 minutes, but I would ask you commissioners to look at Tuesday, July 20th, USA Today, 4D, page 4D. This is coming. The Supreme Court has made a ruling on jurisdictions in Oklahoma, and it's coming to Kansas, it's coming to Colorado, it's going to come to all these Native American states. Like I said, it is McGirt versus the state. So that's the information I give you because I can't read this in 3 minutes. July 20th, Tuesday, 2021, USA Today, page 4D. It's coming, so you might as well be expecting it instead of being a surprise.
and Mr. Mantle, what did you say was the court case name?
It didn't have a court
Oh,
number, but it's
Or-
McGirt versus the state of Oklahoma.
Okay.
Very
All right.
interesting. We're learning a lot. So it's coming.
thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak today? And is there anyone online? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you stand up. Come right out, come right on up.
Okay. I'm Sherry Harp of Salina, and I just have a section of Roger Marshall's a letter or a note to us. He's a doctor, and in case you didn't know, I think y'all know that. Anyway, on his little note to us, it says, as many of you know, on Tuesday, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention reversed course and is now recommending vaccinated Americans wear masks once again. The science, however, does not support a new mask mandate. If you've been vaccinated or you've had the virus, this is time to believe in the science, not anxiety or panic. With the news of the Delta variant, now is the time to talk to your doctor about getting vaccinated. If you haven't yet, science shows us there is no reason to panic, as vaccinations and or natural immunities provide exceptional defense against the Delta variant and all variants. And wearing a mask, as Dr. Fauci said one time, make people feel better, but they do not provide the perfect protection that people think it does. Last week, Dr. Marshall said he joined doctors in Congress at a press conference to discuss the COVID-19 Delta variant. He said, I took the opportunity to encourage Americans to talk to their doctors about getting vaccinated. This is not the time to close down schools, close down the economy, or to insist on mask mandates. This is time to believe in the science of our vaccines and natural immunities, that they work, that you don't need masks, and that we don't need to shut things down again. This is not time to panic and listen to the fear mongers. Science is not on their side. So on my input, I think it should be a person's choice, not mandates.
Thank you very much. And I didn't want to stop you, but we will be addressing that later in today's agenda for those who, if we entertain discussion on that item later. And I'm sorry, I see a hand in the back.
Would you like further remarks to be made later on during the meeting?
I think at this time we would.
Okay, I'll wait. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone available online or anyone else who's here today that would like to speak?
I do not believe we have anyone online.
Thank you very much. We don't have any public hearings or items scheduled for a certain time, so that brings us to the consent agenda.
Item 6.1, approve the minutes of July 26, 2021. 6.2, approve resolution number 21-7973, appoint a member to the Planning Commission.
Are there any items that a commissioner would like to have pulled from the consent agenda?
Nope.
And if not, I would approve, or I would approve, but I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 5-0, which brings us to item 7.1.
Second reading, ordinance number 17-10910, ordering the vacation of the south 20 feet of the 80-foot right-of-way for Pine Street between North Santa Fe Avenue and North Fifth Street.
Thank you. Ordinance number 17-10910 was passed on first reading back in November 2017, subject to the condition that the petitioner, Bieberly Architects, was obligated to complete all the improvements shown on the site plan attached to their vacation petition prior to final approval, second reading of this vacation ordinance. The renovation of the former Missouri Pacific Depot at Santa Fe and Pine Street is complete. A certificate of occupancy for the project has now been issued, and the paved parking area in front of the depot has been constructed and striped, and all the planters have been constructed as shown. So at any rate, normally when we have a second reading on something, it follows the week after that we have passed an ordinance on the first reading. But because this one was conditioned on the applicant completing the plans as submitted, this one we actually have a 4-year delay between first and second reading. Are there any questions for staff? Are there any questions or comments from the public? If not, I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor Hodges, I move we approve ordinance number 17-10910 on second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 17-10910 on second reading. Could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Hoppick,
Aye.
Commissioner Peck.
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan,
Aye.
Mayor Hodges.
Aye. That motion passes 5-0. Item 7.2.
Second reading, ordinance number 21-11066, amending the future land use designation of property located on the north side of Claflin Avenue between South 9th Street and Highland Avenue from urban residential and neighborhood center to public, semi-public.
This ordinance was passed on first reading on July 26, 2021. Since that time, no comments have been received. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners? Are there any questions or comments from members of the public? If not, I would bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, move approval of ordinance number 21-11066 on second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 21-11066 on second reading. Could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Hoppick,
Aye.
Commissioner Peck.
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan,
Aye.
Mayor Hodges.
Aye. And that motion passes 5-0. Which brings us to 7.3.
Second reading, ordinance number 21-11067, changing the zoning classification of Kansas Wesleyan University from R3, C3, and PC5 to U district. The rezoning request area consists of 4 lots on the north side of Claflin Avenue.
Thank you. Ordinance number 21-11067 was passed on first reading on July 26, 2021. Since that time, no comments have been received. Are there any questions or comments from the commission? Are there any questions or comments from members of the public? If not, I would bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor Hodges, I move we approve ordinance number 21-11067 on second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass ordinance number 21-11067 on second reading. Could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Hoppick,
Aye.
Commissioner Peck,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan,
Aye.
Mayor Hodges.
Aye. That motion passes 5-0. Item 7.4.
Second reading ordinance number 21-11068, changing the zoning classification of the Salina Public Library campus from C4 to PPF.
Ordinance number 21-11068 was passed on first reading on July 26, 2021. Since that time, no comments have been received. Are there any questions or comments from the commission? Are there any questions or comments from members of the public? If not, I would bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move passage on second reading of ordinance number 21-11068.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass ordinance number 21-11068 on second reading. Could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Hoppick,
Aye.
Commissioner Peck,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan,
Aye.
Mayor Hodges.
Aye. That motion passes 5-0, which brings us to item 7.5.
COVID update from Salina County Health Director.
Thank you. And before we get started, I do want to emphasize that this is an update very generously provided by Salina County Health Director Jason Tiller. We do not have an action item on our agenda at this time. So as we move forward, please keep that in mind that while I know this issue does generate a lot of discussion and a lot of passion, we aren't actually considering taking any action today. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Tiller.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners, public. Before I get started, I do have to say that I really hoped after the last one that I'd never have to come here and talk to you about this again. I mean, let's be honest. All right. As soon as that's ready and I'm out of the way. All right. Is there any way you can move? There we go. So nobody needs to really look at me anyway. So this is the update as of today. We are up to 6,756 cases in total. You can see our totals there for the last 90 days by month have increased significantly, just as they have in many other places. And quite honestly, if it were just cases, then it wouldn't be, I think, as high a level of concern. But we are seeing that an increase in the hospitalizations, as you'll see over there to the right. KDHE's website was really glitchy today, so a little bit of my data is still from last week and concern around the 2-week % positive rate and the 2-week incidence rate. Vaccine update. Got a little over 22,000 people that have received their first shot. So now we're over 41%. And we do get quite a few questions about how many cases we've had that are related to vaccine breakthrough or people that were fully vaccinated and still diagnosed with COVID. And as of right now, we have 68 cases that we can say are related to vaccine breakthrough, which is about probably 1%, maybe a little less of our total cases. As far as the variant, we know that the Delta variant is driving cases in the state, in this area, and in the regional area. And we have been trying to get as many samples sent to KDHE to get them sequenced as possible to have a better understanding of how many cases are related specifically to variants. And they have been pretty, I think, inundated lately with samples to be sequenced. So that's taken a little bit longer to get back. But as of Friday, we have had 66 that have come back as variants of concern, which includes both the Alpha and the Delta variant. Next slide. So just as a comparison from 2020 and 2021 for the last couple of months. And after I'm done here, I will send these slides as a PDF to Jacob that he can be able to share publicly. And you can just see how the case counts per day compared in June. Next slide. And then July. And now into August. Next slide. Oh, go back one, please. All right, just a couple of charts. I took snapshots from our GIS dashboard this afternoon after it was all updated. So right now it's interesting that our case counts are, if you look at where we were in 2020, are at about the same point as the beginning of November 2020 as we started into the winter surge, and are at about the same point of where we were as we came out of that surge sometime in February. I don't think anybody fully can predict what the next few months are going to hold. A lot of it just depends on, continuing for people to get vaccinated, and just following measures and suggestions that we have, which really haven't changed much in the last year. And then on that bottom chart, those are the hospitalizations, and you can see that they have taken a pretty drastic upswing recently. Next slide. So this is just a snapshot from the CDC data tracker, which many of you may have heard about. This is one of the areas that when they are talking about whether you should wear a mask indoors or not in relation to what the community transmission levels are like. They are looking at this website, and I've put the website information over there. And this is public information. Anybody can go in here. They can look at this. They can look at comparisons. One thing that's interesting, and before he pulls up the next slide, they do have a time-lapse view, which I've put it into the slide. We're going to cross our fingers and hope that it works in the slide today. So if you can go ahead and go to the next one. There we go. So this is for the last 30 days. That big red area is the Springfield, Missouri area. All right, and so that it just starts back over again. So if you want to blame anybody, I guess you could blame Springfield. I say that in jest, but we've I think everybody has been ready for this to be over. We thought it was over. Mentally, we were prepared for it to be over and to enter our summer, thinking we were headed back toward normal and with a normal opening school year. And so this makes it, of course, difficult in that respect. Next slide, please. So what's next? We're onboarding a few extra investigators to help with the surge. We had over the last couple of months lost a few of them, of course, to natural attrition with downward case numbers, had hired a couple into positions. And so now we're having to hire some back. And you've seen this Swiss cheese graphic before. Everything on the left, mask up if you're going to be indoors in crowded settings, especially during this current surge. The big one that we see a lot of time that I really need to emphasize is if you're sick and you're symptomatic, stay home. We hear over and over again that somebody went to work, they went to an event, they went to something like that, were coughing, hacking, sneezing, had signs and symptoms, went there sick, and then ended up infecting others. So stay home if you're sick, please. And if you need to, go get tested. There's quite a few places to get tested. Of course, get vaccinated. The more people that get vaccinated, the better off that we will be. And all of this is aimed at stopping the spread. That's all we want to do, is we want to stop the spread so that we can all get back to normal here in Salina and Saline County. And of course, be informed. Make sure that you're looking at the appropriate types of information, not stuff that is, somewhere that you have found on a blog post buried on the dark web somewhere. But, using legitimate types. And I know that there's all kinds of opinions and concerns. I'm not going to get into that right now about who's legitimate right now and who's not, but just take the time to verify the information that you are using and distributing to others. Next slide. So I kind of like this picture here. How many of you played the telephone game? Remember where you would whisper something to somebody and you'd have a long line of people, and by the time it got to somebody else, that message had mutated. And this is a very rudimentary graphic of the whole idea. But this is kind of a visual of what's happening and where variants happen to come from, because the more that virus mutates, the more it jumps from person to person, the more opportunities it has for mutations, and then the more opportunities those mutations have to either have some sort of impact on vaccination or have impact on the natural immunity after somebody's had COVID and those types of things. Same thing happens with misinformation and disinformation as well. When you're getting word of mouth and rumors, it tends to get skewed pretty significantly. And with that, if there are any questions, next slide. We'll try and answer them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tiller. Even though none of us here were happy to see you on the agenda either. I do appreciate getting the information directly from the source. And I also appreciate the fact that you all are taking the time to do the updates 3 times a week again. And for anybody watching, anybody in the audience, the best way to get accurate information about what's happening in Saline County, aside from the interactive CDC map, is to subscribe to the health department's newsletter that comes out Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So thank you
Yes,
for
ma'am.
that. And I will turn to other members of the commission and invite you all to go ahead and.
One question. A lot of times folks will go to either urgent cares, wherever they're getting tested, and they're told the results are negative. And they have trouble finding out if that negative sample is then being forwarded to KDHE. Is there a protocol or method by which KDHE will automatically accept them, or certain criteria that says, well, we don't need to test this one?
Right. So originally, and this was probably even up to 6 weeks ago, whenever we would identify cases that were having special characteristics, i.e. A very short period of time in between case A and case B developing symptoms or something like that, then we were trying to get those sent. What we were finding is that those samples at that point, because of generally a lack of storage in most labs, they weren't holding on to them. So after some discussion with KDHE, we developed the protocol that any positive PCR test would be sent to KDHE for sequencing. Now, they have to have enough viral load in that sample in order to get enough, and I'm not a lab person, so I'm not even going to try and give a lecture on viral sequencing, but I know that that's the samples. It's not the antigen ones that they're able to pull that viral information from when they're trying to do it, but it is the positive PCRs that are going for sequencing. And then I know not too long ago as well, they really kind of started trying to get more from across the state, which is why I said now it's before it's taking 7, 8, maybe 9 days to get those sequencing results back. But I think now they've got quite a bit of samples coming in that they're trying to do, so it's taken longer for that. However, in the absence of that information, pretty much since the majority of everything that is being seen is Delta variant, then the assumption is that's what we are dealing with for the most part is Delta variant.
was at an event in Nicodemus, Kansas this Saturday. And the governor came to dedicate a building, and hope I have the name of the county right. Nicodemus is in Graham County. Anybody?
Sounds right,
I see
yeah.
some heads going up. All right, thank you. Graham County, small as it is population wise, has the highest percentage of its residents that are vaccinated. It's also got the lowest incidence of new infections, particularly the Delta variant.
Mhm.
Yeah, so doesn't take much to draw a conclusion there.
Right, absolutely. And it's still, the vaccine is still available in many places across the county. Pharmacies, if you go on to, and it's on the slides, and we've talked about it a lot over the last several months, vaccines.gov or vaccinefinder.org. You can find places that are giving it. If you want a specific one, whether it's Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson & Johnson, you can see what they have in stock and make those connections and get a vaccine. There's really no real barrier at this point, unless your doctor specifically says that you shouldn't because of some sort of allergy or some other reason. There's no other reason at that point, then you shouldn't get one.
I noticed on your dashboard, it talked about the number of individuals who are currently hospitalized, and so did the report that came out on July 30th. I did notice that it does not mention the number of individuals that are vaccinated or unvaccinated. Is
Right.
there a reason for that?
So remember that the number that we report from the hospital is the number that they have, but that does not include just Saline County. Because they are a regional hospital, any patients they have in the hospital affects their regional ability to deal with any other medical surge that we would have here. So there are some, I guess you could say, some barriers that we haven't worked through yet when it comes to patient information for patients that are not Saline County residents. And so it's reporting information from the hospital and what they feel most comfortable with their legal department in sharing. It's not, and I have a feeling where you're going with this, but it is I can't demand and say you have to give me this particular information, but we have been continuing to work with them for information.
And we're not making decisions today, and I don't believe the county commission is, but it's hard to make an educated decision without without all the information that's out there. It seems kind of unusual that we're not able to get that information, where it doesn't matter which national television station you watch, they have no problems giving you a percentage of vaccinated and unvaccinated. So I think that's something we really ought to work strongly. And I don't care if they're Saline County residents or not.
Exactly.
I think it makes sense
Yeah.
for us to know whether they're vaccinated or unvaccinated.
Yeah.
So that would be the one question I have. One other one, and this is just food for future. I know there's been a lot of talk about potential booster shots being given in the future based on studies. Would Saline County look to open up a site like they did at JCPenney's if we were to need to give booster shots to the community?
If that became something that we had to do as far as doing the booster shots, then we would certainly look at potentially having some sort of large site. I don't know if JCPenney, of course, is still available,
I'm just
but
using
yes,
that since that.
yes, we would probably, especially for the 20 something odd thousand that we have vaccinated at this point. If we were trying to do a third booster as a mass vaccination, we would have to open some sort of larger site like that in order to get them through.
Okay.
And be in a reasonable manner and amount of time.
Right. Thank you.
Is there an upper limit of cases that the hospital can handle, notwithstanding that you have a case and it's crowding out someone else that has a need, but
Well, that would be a specific question for them, but I do, in our conversations with them, they have capacity to expand into other parts. That's always been part of their plan. To put an exact number on it, I personally can't put a number on like to say that at 30 patients, they have reached whatever they can reach. I think that also depends some, too, as well on the severity of the patients that they have. For a while there, Springfield Hospital, they were overwhelmed. They opened multiple wards. They put out a call for ventilators. And so that changes the capacity of how many people they can hold. If they are sick, but not so sick that they need to go on ventilators, then that changes the capacity. So long story short, there's not a specific number, but they do have capacity to expand.
And I'm not, even I'm a hospital employee, I'm not speaking on behalf of the hospital. But COVID infected patients require a lot of resources. And I'm a neurologist, so I deal with a lot of stroke patients. We can't bring stroke patients in from other cities right now because there are no nurses left. We can't put them in the ICU. I mean, other things that hospitals routinely take care of occur 12 months a year. And that's where the health of everyone, not just here, because we serve about 250,000 people in our service area here. There's a whole lot of other people being put at risk when they can't come here. And Wichita is already maxed out. So we're, and not many places to go. This is, and we should all be proud of this, probably and Topeka might argue, I think we're the third most capable, but maybe the fourth most capable medical facility in the state of Kansas. I mean, there's no place west of here that touches us.
Right. And
I won't get into a shouting match with the cities nearby because I need them to do me a favor one day. But if Wichita and Kansas City aren't available, a whole lot of people get stuck.
And just to follow up on that, when you mentioned the potential for expansion, that potential for expansion is dependent upon staff
Right.
and other resources being available. And as you said, with COVID taking those resources, there are going to be a lot of surgeries, a lot of testing for things that need to be screened for and done routinely and emergently that we're not going to be able to handle like we normally would.
I don't know if you had the age, but the information we received from the hospital last week, the overwhelming majority of people in the hospital sick right now are under the age of 60.
Yeah, I think from my report today, and I'm trying to pull it off the top of my head, but I would say I think 2/3 were under 60.
First time age has a real benefit health-wise, but if you're vaccinated.
Any other questions for Mr. Tiller from commissioners?
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
I did have a couple. I just wanted to make sure everyone else had an opportunity. Have you seen much of an uptick in vaccinations in the last couple of weeks? It looked like it maybe had increased marginally, or?
So there's probably twofold. We have seen more people, I think, getting vaccinated. Another impact to the vaccination number was that for a period of time from February to May-ish timeframe, for whatever reason, some of the vaccine providers that were giving shots, primarily pharmacies that were involved in the federal vaccination program, for whatever reason, those weren't ending up in the state vaccination WebIZ system. And it was something at the federal level with their reporting. They finally got it all fixed. And so a lot of that caught up in the last week. And I think that added about 900 or so. And I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but about 700, 800, 900 vaccinations to our total. But I think based off of some of what's happening, we have seen a small, not very big, but a small uptick in those getting vaccinated as well. So every person though that gets vaccinated is one more person, on the good side of this COVID battle, if you will.
Right. And I think your earlier material mentioned that out of about 23,000 vaccinations, people who have been vaccinated either with one or both doses, we've had 68 breakthrough infections that we're aware of at this point. And to me, that that speaks volumes as to the efficacy of the vaccination. Just for people who are watching or people who are in the audience today, the links that you referenced, both to find a vaccine or to find a place to be tested, those links are on the Saline County website. The links to them are?
They are on our Facebook page.
Okay,
The website, I think, has got some updating and some work that's being done on it,
Okay.
but they are on our Facebook page. They are in the slideshow, which will be available publicly, including the ones for where the CDC data was at, and of course, our dashboards and that stuff, but they'll be available there as well.
right. So the place for people to look is basically at the Saline County Health Department Facebook page, if you need help accessing any of those resources.
And if people have questions about where to find resources and they can't get to a computer, please call us. We do that quite often, trying to direct people and connect them to the resources they need. So,
Right. Well, thank you very much for all your hard work
all right,
on behalf of our community.
thank you.
Thank you. I debated about whether or not to do citizen comments at this time, because here's what I'm trying to avoid. We received an update. I'm sorry, did I stop speaking there? I said I debated about whether to do this. I want to keep people's comments, questions on topic. This is about the data that we received today. We are not considering an action. I can't speak for my fellow governing body members, but getting up here and advocating either to resume a mask mandate or to not resume a mask mandate, it's not even something that's under consideration at this time. So if you want to speak to the data that was presented today and any questions or any concerns that you have about the source of that data or any further information that you would like to have, please feel free. But speaking just for myself, I think I know how strongly most of you feel either for or against masking, and that's not under consideration today. So with that being said, I will open it up to public comment, 3 minutes, and please give your first and last name and where you're from.
She always tries to beat me, so I want to get up here first. I'm Carol Reed. I guess I wanted to hear a little discussion on the herd immunity from, I don't hear that phrase. I don't hear people using it. And yet that was a big topic that was used during all this time of the vaccine. And they kept talking about once you've had it, you have the immunities. And so, but now they don't use that. If the mask works, then why get a vaccine? If the herd immunity, why get a vaccine? If the vaccine works, why do they wear a mask? All those kind of questions are just what kind of mill around in my mind.
Well, thank you, Ms. Reed. Thank you very much. I think the herd immunity question, that's precisely the sort of thing that we're looking for in terms of if there's information that Mr. Tiller can provide to us, that's great. And
I was just you can get herd immunity from hepatitis B if there's a great big outbreak. But you have to ask yourself, do you really want to get hepatitis B the natural way just to become immune from it? You can get a vaccine for it and not get hepatitis B. Will some people break through? Yeah. Herd immunity works. That's how we get through the flu. Remember, the flu before COVID killed 10,000 a year from pneumonia. So herd immunity is great if you survive it. But just depends on how you like to roll your dice.
Sorry, can you guys speak a little louder for some reason? And I'm here to listen, but I'm older and I can't hear you as well because our microphones aren't working well. And so when Carol was asking you about herd immunity, I also wanted to say, and I will, Mr. Tiller, is he still here?
no.
Well, I wish we could have asked him. I had a friend that had the flu. Well, let me tell you, he had the same symptoms as COVID. He was sick. Now, Dr. Fauci said in 2020 that the flu and COVID had similar reactions. And I guess he's the authority. I'm not really sure. But anyway, so my question is, my friend had really got sick and he was sure he had COVID, went to the hospital, tested negative, and he had the flu. So why are we not pushing flu vaccines as this has been flu season? And I don't know. I mean, I'd like to know the difference between those that were hospitalized, if it was really COVID or the flu, because the flu is, you mentioned it, killed many people before anything else, but now we don't push the flu vaccine, we're pushing COVID. And maybe you can answer my question here. When you, doctor, when you have the flu vaccine, are they putting COVID in you? Is it the virus they're putting in you?
I'm going to go out on a limb. I don't think the routine flu shot that we get every fall is incorporating the COVID vaccine, but there's a public health person in here, and I'll check that out tonight.
Well,
But every year, the flu shot that we get in the fall is made up from previous year's germs and the ones that scientists think will be here in North America that.
and we're
year.
talking about germs, very good, because we're going to have germs and we're trying to avoid germs. And that's where herd immunity comes from, is from your germs. And so when you say that people who don't take the vaccine, it's because all this information, I mean, it kind of puts people in a spot saying you're guilty if you don't have the vaccine. That's not fair, because this is still experimental. And they said that 68 cases, is that what they said was back in?
68 out of 23,000,
Okay, but they had the vaccine, right?
the 68.
They had the vaccine.
And we don't know if they were hospitalized or not.
And so we don't know how many out of that other will still get COVID later on. That's just right now. So when you say people that, my mom's 101 years old, she's scared to death to take the vaccine because she's healthy. And she's scared to take it because she doesn't want to be not healthy. And a lot of people have had reactions. And so her doctor just recommends 65 and over to go ahead and get a vaccine if they think they should. And it's their choice. That's what we all want to have, is a choice. So anyway, that's enough of me and my
Thank you.
sister.
Anyone else who would like to speak to or has questions about the data that was presented today?
Dalton McDowell, Salina. The last person I would listen to is Dr. Anthony Fauci. He has came out and has redacted his statements multiple of times.
Is there any?
Knowledge changes. All right.
Mhm.
We used to think that estrogen protected women from heart disease. Turns out it's the reverse. But did we keep holding on to the old tenet just because we didn't want to look bad? No, we said, hey, you know, ladies, maybe this isn't as healthy for you as we thought it was. So let's try to get as many of you off as possible.
I'm sorry, you've already returned. That's it.
Good afternoon, Sandy Walsh, Salina. Mr. Tiller kept using this term barrier to taking the vaccine, or barriers to getting people in. And it just struck me that it seems like, and if you're here to ask him, it seems like one of the biggest barriers to taking this vaccine is our own government. I mean, the FDA won't even approve the vaccine. So we're asking people to take a vaccination shot that our own government won't even approve. So when you talk about a deterrent to getting the vaccine, I think we could first look at our own government and say, okay, if you're telling me to take the vaccine, but then I could go out and get it, or I should wear a mask. So the conflicting information is causing people, I'm like you, I'm kind of glad I'm over 65 now. So since I'm in a group now that's not getting it as much.
If you're
But-
vaccinated.
But right, and I have been, so it's not about I'm for or against it, but it's about having a choice. But he kept saying barrier. I think we can look to our own government and say, there's a big barrier. I can't even get our own FDA to approve the vaccine. So, thank you.
Andy Ross, and live in Salina here, physician at Maori, and none of the views are expressed are my own personal. So I guess I just wanted to, I know we're not talking about masks and stuff today, but I guess I wanted to share a couple of things. In terms of a positive note, I think one thing that I was concerned with the CDC's guideline last week in terms of the masks is that I've heard patients almost a more apprehension about getting the vaccine because of that, because there's claimed no effect in transmissibility and all those kinds of things. But last week, the New England Journal of Medicine actually had a study on a UK study looking at Delta variant infection rate after the initial vaccines. They looked at two separate ones, the equivalent of the Pfizer vaccine for us and the equivalent of the AstraZeneca vaccine. And interestingly enough, after they had efficacy against Delta to some degree after first dose, and after the second was even more. Interestingly enough, the Pfizer-like vaccine after 2 doses for the Alpha variant, which is the one we've been seeing, was 80. Let's see, read it here for you. 93% effective. And then for the Delta variant, it was 88% effective. The confidence interval on this study, which was an observational study, was good, 95%. That's really good. Okay, same thing with the AstraZeneca. It's not as good, but it was still decent. Alpha was a 74%, 67% efficacy with the Delta variant. I guess my point in saying this is, one, there is some good news that we're seeing less cases, less deaths. There is a concern. There's more. We're seeing more cases. We're still seeing less deaths overall with the vaccine rollout across the other countries as well with this. I think the concern I would express the most is there is a risk apparently now that of Delta being transmitted with vaccinated persons. That risk seems to be small, and I think the concern that I have with my patients, if the vaccine is the thing that is going to really help, which I think it is helping. I really do think it's helping. I mean, you look at the data, it's helping, and you can debate the concerns about the newness of it and so forth. But the additional mask measures, I think, looking forward, I think we just need to use some caution as far as, is that going to disincentivize more people or even provide a false sense of security with the mask? Because if someone is sick and can't have the vaccine or whatever, I think depending on the public to wear masks has not been terribly effective, and it might be better to maybe do an N95 mask or something like that you can get on an individual basis rather than depending on those scenarios. So those are a few comments.
Thank you very much,
Thanks.
Doctor. Anyone else who'd like to speak this afternoon?
Hi, Commissioners, Ms. Mayor. I was hoping Mr. Tiller would stick around because I had a few questions that I would like to address as well. And it seems like the main concern that Mr. Tiller had, and I've heard this from this board as well, is the vaccination rate here in Salina. And there are many hindrances. I think the word barrier was used several times. The unknown, I think, is one of the big barriers as well. I wanted an explanation from Mr. Tiller from the reaction of the CDC, Dr. Walensky, who is the CDC's own director, who said this past week that vaccines are now failing and, and vaccinated people may now carry higher viral loads than unvaccinated people, contributing to the spread of COVID. We've taken up this phrase of breakthrough infections, but truly what it is, it's a vaccine failure. Dr. Davis said a moment ago that knowledge changes. I was going to say science. Knowledge changes. Well, the knowledge that many people had 3-4 weeks ago was that the vaccine was keeping them safe, and apparently that knowledge has changed, and the vaccine is not keeping them safe. I'm hearing heartbreaking, heart-wrenching stories from people whose family members are suffering adverse effects to the vaccine. And that's why I was hoping Mr. Tiller would be here so he could explain what is going on with our hospitals. Are our hospitals seeing COVID cases, or are they seeing
adverse reaction cases. The result or the report that came out last week made a jaw-dropping statement to me. It said over the last 6 months, more people have died from reaction to the COVID vaccines than from all other vaccines in the history of America combined. That's jaw-dropping to me, that we've allowed this to be pushed through in such a way, and yet we're still pushing it and pushing it and pushing it upon each other. Our school board here in Salina made an abysmal decision last week by mandating vaccinated, unvaccinated, all students from kindergarten through 12th grade to wear masks inside their buildings whenever they're around, whether they're studying, whether they're in offices, everywhere. And that is absolutely disincentivizing, as the doctor said just a moment ago. There's not one confirmed case where a child has passed COVID to a teacher. Not one. And yet we are taking it upon ourselves to push these things. Now, I'm not, vaccines are good, they're bad, whatever. I'm not debating that today. That's why I wanted Mr. Tiller to be here to give some insight from the Saline County Health Department, because the reason that we have 60% of our community not vaccinated is because there are still questions.
Thank you.
And that's why I wanted some answer from him. So if Mr. Tiller is able to come back at a certain point or whatever, that would be an interesting topic.
Suggest if you have, I wasn't quite sure that I even heard a question in there. So if you could, if you want to send the commission an email
Okay.
with any of the questions, we'd be happy to forward those to Mr.
Be happy
Miller.
to. I'll be
Thank
happy
you.
to. Thank you, guys.
I just wanted to make one comment, Dr. Maria Rapp, and I've been in practice almost 30 years as a chiropractor, healthcare, and 25 of those years in Salina. I wanted to add a little positive mojo to this situation here because there's a lot of negative. And my job in this community is to promote positive. I want everybody to know, and this is kind of along with the Breastfeeding Coalition that I'm involved with, the human body is amazing. It's incredible. It's able, and it's a healing entity. And I see that constantly in my job. I know most doctors don't see that, but I want you to know that I see on a daily basis miracles. I see bodies functioning. I see bodies doing what they're designed to do. So I want to encourage you to be thinking along those lines, and please promote that, because the negativity is horrid out there, and I see it in my clinic. And I really want to promote positive. Breastfeeding, I mean, our bodies can create a human being, give birth to a human being, and feed a human being. If you can't appreciate that, then you're not looking in the right places. So I want everybody to look within, take care of yourself. I'm not hearing enough of that. Let's take care of ourselves, because the human body is amazing. And I've seen it for 30 years, and I plan on seeing it for another 50. So yay, bodies.
Thank you, Dr. Rapp. Anyone else? If not, I will look online. Do we have any hands raised online?
We do not appear to have anyone online, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Hurst. All right, we don't have any action to take on this item, so we will, in the absence of any direction from other commissioners, we will move on to item 7.6.
Authorize publication of notice of budget hearing for the 2022 budget, which sets August 16th as the date for public hearing on the 2022 budget and establishes the maximum limits of the 2022 budget.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. I just want to, first of all, thank Dr. Davis for saying that the budget went so smoothly that we didn't have any ups and any hiccups. Here's the hiccup. We did not get the publication to the paper in time to get it published. We're required 10 days notice in advance of the public hearing. So that's why I'm back here in front of you today asking to move that public hearing 1 week out so that we can get that notice to the paper and follow statute by giving 10 days notice. What it does ultimately is just moves the schedule down 1 week, and we did have 1 week kind of in the schedule that allowed us to do. So that is why we're here asking to move this today. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Any questions from Ms. Pack?
Nope.
Thank you very much. See, you belt and suspender kind of,
That's right.
yeah,
Good thing we had some cushion.
exactly. Thank you for that. Any questions or comments from the public? And I don't see anyone online, so I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move to authorize publication of notice of budget hearing for the 2022 budget, which sets August 16th as the date for public hearing on the 2022 budget and establish the maximum limits of the 2022 budget.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to authorize the publication of the notice of budget hearing for the 2022 budget, setting August 16th as the date for public hearing and establishes the maximum limits of the 2022 budget. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. We don't have any development business. Is there any other business that a commissioner would like to bring?
So this is in effect remove the budget from next week's agenda then?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm just asking because I wasn't going to be here physically in person. So it's-
Darn it. I thought they were going to get that taken care of without us.
Right.
If there's nothing else, then I would accept the motion to adjourn.
Move to
adjourn.
second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes 5-0.
Didn't get to.